everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Standing on the shoulders of Black women activists like Sojourner Truth, Mary Church Terrell, Ida B. Wells Barnett, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Evelyn Butts, African-American women once again played a pivotal role in the election process, this time helping to ensure the election of the 46th President of the United States, President-Elect Joe Biden. But in their wildest dreams, could they have imagined that a Black woman would be the first woman elected as vice president? That dream is now a reality, and the Another View Roundtable is here to talk about it. Black girl political magic. It's next on Another View, so stay tuned.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Before we get to our roundtable, I want to tell you about two events that are happening in the community that I think you will be interested in. The Hampton and Newport News chapters of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated are presenting Caregivers Impact Day, a women's health summit, and they are inviting you to attend this Zoom summit. It's going to be held on Friday, November the 20th from 11 until 1:30 in the afternoon. Now, you do need to register in advance, and I'll give you that information in just a moment, but they have three dynamic speakers who will cover different areas of taking care of the elderly and being a caregiver at home. We have Dr. Favon Epps, who will talk about care strategies for dementia caregivers, Dr. Melissa Gomez, who will talk about the importance of mental health for caregivers, and Dr. Latanya Hughes, who will talk about making choices for home-assisted and long-term care. So if you are interested in attending this virtual conference, you can contact Dr. Ethelyn Gibson at 757-775-2484. That's 757-775-2484. And she will give you the information you need in order to register for that conference. And I hope that you will join me on this coming Monday, November the 16th, from 6 until 7 p.m. The United Way of Southampton Roads and the African American Leadership Society is presenting Building Social Equity, a Faith-Based Perspective. And we're going to have four leaders in the faith community talk about building social equity. We have Rabbi Rosalind Mandelberg of Ohesh Shalom Temple, Dr. James Allen at New Hope Baptist Church and the Virginia Beach Interdenominational Conference of Ministers, Reverend Jim Curran, the Basilica of St. Mary of the Immaculate Conception, and Father Mario Melendez, Church of the Holy Apostles. And we're going to be talking about disparities in the community, how our local congregations are addressing those disparities, and how you can get involved. Now, everyone is invited. It is free, and you register at UnitedWaySHR.org/AALS. UnitedWaySHR.org/AALS. That's Monday night from 6 until 7 p.m. on Zoom. My whole life is on Zoom, so I hope that you will join us there. Stacey Abrams, Latasha Brown, Amy Allison, Virginia State Senator Mamie Locke, Gayleen Knoyton, Virginia Senate Pro Tem Louise Lucas, our very own Daun Hester. What do all of these women have in common? They were all instrumental in delivering the largest voter turnout for a presidential election in at least 50 years. Black women were a driving force behind the numbers, and we have a panel of focus-driven women to talk about it. Alvean Lyons is Virginia's relationship expert and host of The Lyons Den, heard on 88.1 WHRV FM. Hi, Alvean. How are you?
I'm great. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. Just wanted to make sure. You know, with all this technology, we can't assume that just because our lips are moving that people can hear each other.
Exactly. Well, I'm glad we can hear you. Welcome back. And thank you again for last week, too. So welcome back.
Oh, my pleasure.
Daun Hester serves as treasurer for the city of Norfolk. Hey, Daun.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be with all of you again. I'm happy.
We are great.
That we can make it heard.
Okay, and Carol Pretlow is political science professor at Norfolk State University. Hi, Carol.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
And we're so excited because, Carol, we actually set everyone up on Zoom so that we can see each other while we're having the conversation. And this is the first time Carol's been able to join us face to face. So we're happy to have you, Carol. How you doing?
I'm happy, even though you put me on blast. I'm happy.
Oh, gosh. And we do have Alison Moore, who is a clean comedian and host of More Laughing in the Morning television program. How you doing, Alison?
Hey, y'all. Hey.
So I have to tell you, ladies, last night I was sitting in the den, hubby and I are watching TV, and a commercial pops up for Virginia Natural Gas. And whose face is all over the commercial?
Exactly.
Ms. Alison Moore now she's also a commercial actress. Tell us about it, Alison.
Yeah, Virginia Natural Gas, they have an energy efficiency campaign, and so I was hired to be the poster child for energy efficiency. I'm like, well, since I'm the Groupon cutie pie, can I get a Groupon? But my son is in it too, and so I was really excited about him. I decided I cannot be a Disney parent though, because I was almost punch him in the face. I mean, not for real.
Well, we are really happy and proud of all the work that you're doing. So thank you so very much for that. So, Miss Daun, I included you in my intro as one of the folks around locally as well as nationally, because you are also on the national stage, in terms of the work that you all did to help get President-Elect Biden and Vice President-Elect Harris elected. Tell us about the work that you're doing with Black Women for Biden-Harris.
Well, we are celebrating right now because the election is over and we have a victory. And we're proud that they are now President-Elect and Vice President-Elect. We were really pleased with everyone across the country because 90% of Biden's vote, as many people know, was from the African-American community, women and men. And so we did a great job turning out the vote. And when I say I'm talking about the national campaign and everybody and locally, understanding why it was so important for them to vote, why it was important to vote early, because I think that, the way the numbers started coming in on election night was that day vote. But then once we started doing the absentee ballots and the ballots that came, the early vote ballots, then the numbers changed. So people came out, they voted, they listened, they participated, and they understood why, yes, every vote counts. And, we're just at around 14,000 votes in Georgia, but we're still going to call Georgia blue because we believe that vote is going to hold as well. So now we're getting ready for the Senate race in Georgia because we've got to bring that home. And so we're just continuing to work, thanking everybody for their work, and also working on the transition team. So if there are people who are interested in some of these D.C. jobs, that opportunity exists as well. But we are really excited. We're relieved. I feel a little less burdened. And I am glad that I have not heard, excuse me, I probably shouldn't say this, so I won't. So, but anyway, I'm glad that we had the victory.
Well, I wonder, Alvean, what was your reaction as you watched the election come together?
Well, I mean, there's so many mixed reactions, and this election obviously is unlike any other. We have been in such a tense place inside of our nation, as Joe Biden is speaking to, it was a battle for the soul of our nation. And I think that many of us really, that resonated with many of us because that feels like what we're really going through, that this is an existential question. Who are we as Americans? So for America to vote in historic levels on both sides of the aisle, it is clear that Americans as a whole, regardless of what their political position was, felt that very same thing. Who am I, and how will my voice be represented in the fabric of, the flag that has been sown? So I felt an enormous sense of relief that we were what I thought was going to be on the other side of this. Apparently, this is the longest dun that ever exists. It's like I just, the ellipses just keep going. It's like your phone is still loading. I'm just amazed sometimes that we're still in this conversation, and even further baffled by one's ability, and my degrees are in psychology, one's ability to lie to oneself, is absolutely staggering. And I'll say this just in a joking fashion, although I'm sure there are lots of people who don't find it quite so funny, and I'm not even the comedian in this, Alison, but I must say to you that my daughters used to say to me all the time that girls lie to themselves so often about these dudes that dudes don't even have to lie. So I feel like that's what's happening inside of this election. We got folks in very high positions of authority in our nation who are telling themselves fibs. And it's just, and they are committed. So needless to say, there are so many different thoughts. There are so many different feelings. I'm excited about the possibilities that exist in front of us, and the knowingness that America didn't sit back and wait for the story to be written. Americans got out there and decided they were going to be part of writing the story.
Right. Carol, what are your students telling you? What's the talk on campus?
Whoa, you don't even have enough time for that. I think a lot of them are expressing the feeling that I had. Finally, when Joe Biden spoke and said, I have to thank the African-American community and I have your back, I said, oh, my God, thank you. And so many of my students are expressing that, but they are a little more skeptical than I am. And they said, okay, that's all well and good for the public, but what you going to do for us day one? And we want some concrete ideas and some concrete perspectives. And they have confidence in him, but they are still, show me what you got, people.
Okay. As a matter of fact, we have a soundbite from Joe Biden actually talking about the African-American community and its contribution. Let's take a listen.
I'm proud of the coalition we put together, the broadest and most diverse coalition in history. Democrats, Republicans, independents, progressives, moderates, conservatives, young, old, urban, suburban, rural, gay, straight, transgender, white, Latino, Asian, Native American. I mean it, especially those moments, and especially for those moments when this campaign was at its lowest ebb. The African-American community stood up again for me. You've always had my back, and I'll have yours.
Alison, when you heard him say the African-American community has always stood up, the Black community has always stood up, had my back, and I'll have yours. Did that resonate with you?
Yeah, it resonated.
Go ahead. Oh, your audio. Keep talking.
I mean, who are you? You were talking to me, or you talking?
No,
to
I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you, Alison.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it definitely resonated. I would have, if that was an A-, A+ would have been like, I broke your trust in the past. I think a little bit of acknowledgement towards, I do see that you all gave me another chance. You've always had my back. I feel like a lot of the African American community, we realized that Joe Biden might not have been Joe Biden for some people weren't the president that we would have created. And I think that some people would have liked to hear him say, my past.
You know what?
Thank you.
We're going to work on your audio a little bit because we got some kind of interference going on there. So I'm going to come back to you in just a little bit. But in the meantime, Daun, or actually, I want to play a clip from Vice President-Elect Harris because she also acknowledged African-American women in particular. Let's take a listen to that.
To the woman most responsible for my presence here today, my mother, Kamala Gopalan Harris, who is always in our hearts. When she came here from India at the age of 19, she maybe didn't quite imagine this moment. But she believed so deeply in an America where a moment like this is possible. And so I am thinking about her and about the generations of women, Black women, Asian, white, Latina, Native American women who throughout our nation's history have paved the way for this moment tonight. Women who fought and sacrificed so much for equality and liberty and justice for all, including the Black women who are often, too often, overlooked, but so often prove they are the backbone of our democracy.
And how important was that to acknowledge, to have both the president-elect and the vice president-elect acknowledge the work of the African-American community?
It was expected. If they had not, they would be jacked up right now. And it is expected that the cabinet and his appointments and the individuals who will be on commissions and who will be actually getting things done, which we know women do and Black women do, is going to have to happen on his cabinet. And I don't have any doubt that that will not occur. But because, a lot of it, too, of carrying President-elect Biden over the hump was because he selected Kamala, because it was an opportunity that we saw to have a woman of color in the vice president position. So we broke one glass ceiling. Another one has been broken. So, we've got 4 or 8 years to get ready for hopefully the next one that we plan to break. So the objective is to continue to work, to build and understand, to have this administration to be successful. And that's one of the reasons why in my initial comments I talked about Georgia. We must win Georgia, or else we will have in the Senate some of the same stuff because some of the same people are there who will block the initiatives that he has laid out in his plans for us. And so to make something happen, we're going to have to win. So, but they will have to acknowledge it throughout their campaign. And we expect to see Black women in major roles in everything that they do. And the plans that have been laid out, women will be a part of helping to implement those plans. But I do need to say that the brothers were in there, too, because the brothers did better than the last time. So, I got to mention that. I
know. And you went
women up in the house.
And what did you guys do actually to engage the African American men? Because Alvean, if you remember last week in our conversation, there was discussion, Daun, about the fact that African American men felt like they really didn't have a platform and that they really didn't, that nobody was paying attention to them. I'll let you respond first, Daun, then I'll come to you, Alvean.
Well, I think a part of it was, we did have Black men for Biden. We started affinity groups for Black men. We had barbershop conversations with Black men. I think, you're aware that, some of our athletes were totally engaged. I think that helped to bring in some of our brothers to understand the importance of it because, we really had not had those types of conversations before. And, Shaquille O'Neal voting for the first time, LeBron's mama voting for the first time. So, you had a lot of people that were just by demonstrating and doing were saying this is really important to us for our future. Because, y'all, this really was not just an election. This was making sure we don't have a revolution. It doesn't mean that we're still not having one, but we are fighting a revolution because this country is split pretty much 50-50. And so we have so much work to do to help people realize that the conversations that we need to have and the plans that the Biden administration has put in place are plans that are going to help all communities, not just Black people. It's going to help everybody. So, and it's going to take everybody to help make those things happen. So I just wanted to make sure I did that shout out. But I mean, the Asian groups, Latino groups, you know, the numbers were higher everywhere. And the campaign had affinity groups of every faith, gender, ethnicity, everything. We were on Zooms all day long with all the different affinity groups. And he's going to continue that. So if you were a part of any of that, you should have received an email from the campaign so that he can stay in touch throughout this administration. I just think that's real important.
Okay. Alvean, you want to respond to what we're talking about in terms of Black men and the ultimate outcome?
Well, absolutely. I mean, people were a little bit shocked to see that there were some celebrities of color, men in particular, you know, for instance, the Ice Cubes and Lil Waynes of the world that were seemingly, and because no one was inside of the voting booth with them to say what they actually did at the moment, right? But seemingly standing with, or certainly extending the olive branch to the Trump campaign and the Trump administration. And people really question, how is it possible that Trump picked up roughly 18% of the community of our community of color's vote in particular? How did that happen, given the rhetoric that has certainly ignited a lot of our passion throughout the community, and not in good ways? And the response was really that men of color felt two things were true. One, the historical, policies that, President Biden, soon to be President Biden, had, many years ago, had some significant impact on African American men relative to the justice system. So there were some policies that were in place that we see the long-term impacts of those that have still left a tattoo on our communities and inside of our homes. So there was that factor. And then there was the sense that very often we give our loyalties, or they give their loyalties to the Democratic Party, and can't speak to how that's positively impacting their communities. Some of the most dilapidated communities in our nation have Democratic leadership, and they feel abandoned inside of that. They felt abandoned inside of their gender roles, that what happens, what does it mean to be a man anymore in this very gender fluid society, and missing sort of that clear patriarchal expression of manhood and economic, empowerment, what that really means in their abilities to provide for their families. And so there are elements inside of our African-American community that felt a bit disenfranchised inside of our current two-party system, and, decided that they were going to lean in, let's do something different, do the same thing, expecting different results is insanity. And some might argue, voting on the opposite side felt like insanity to some folks. But, the reality is that people are making their decisions by virtue of what their personal experiences are and how they're processing those experiences. So we've seen some unusual things, happen inside of this space, which still goes back to what, President-Elect Biden is speaking to. There's a wrestling that's happening not at a cerebral level, it's happening at a soulful level about who we are, what we're about, and what we're willing to do to make sure that we bring everybody inside of this fold that we call America.
Carol, do you think, do your male students in particular, your Black male students, talk about this very issue? Do they feel empowered with the new administration coming in, or do they still feel disenfranchised and want to make a change or do something different?
Well, I'm going to let one of my male students speak to it directly himself, because he's sitting here with me, and without him, I wouldn't have been able to join you. But by and large, there is a diversity. A lot of them are encouraged, but at their age, they're like, okay, show me. I don't want to hear any more blah, 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 blah. Show me exactly what you're going to do. And some of them, even in one of my classes, had a chart of the electoral vote in each of the states and said, well, let's look at the sociological conditions in each of those before we come up with a blanket support. But I'm gonna let she's saying no. Okay.
Well, don't put him on the spot
Okay.
if he doesn't want to respond. But
okay.
but we'd love to hear from him if he'd like to respond. But in the meantime, if you're just joining us, we're talking about the role of African American women in the 2020 presidential election with relationship expert Alvean Lyons, Norfolk City Treasurer Daun Hester, political science professor Carol Pretlow, and comedian and entrepreneur Alison Moore. Alison, when you talk to your village, your friends and folks around your young age, I love you. What did they vote? Did they come out? Were they a part of this wave?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I know that you want me to be young.
I know.
Barbara, and you're the only person that's calling me young. You know I'm at 40. So it's almost, you got my community saying to me, why do you think we don't vote, Alison? Yeah, so we definitely voted. So, even I have friends that I'm 37. So our children are in high school. I have friends that have children that are in college. I mean, we're not just 20-year-olds. We definitely did vote. But I think a lot of us are kind of like, girl, we gonna see. We are not at all sleeping on 2020 and these interesting Republicans and everything. Y'all called me at the inauguration. In the meantime, I just want to see, I think what my biggest community is, a huge part of my following is definitely my age group of women professionals. We're trying to figure out, we're trying to get our footing in this space professionally. And so a lot of us want to see how this impacts us as Black women having a VP that's a Black woman. Does it make us safer? I'm currently, even right now, seeing that in media with my show and how hard of a time I am having these conversations at these higher levels. And I'm just hoping that Kamala's presence will eventually trickle down and I can see it's not so much of a fight for me to be there or so much of a how she get here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what is the name of this? The Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies put out a list of potential cabinet positions for include that the candidates are African American, and there's some from the Hampton Roads area. Potential. So commerce, for example, Melody Hobson is a possibility. They're saying education. Bobby Scott, our very own Congressman Bobby Scott, and also for HUD, Maurice Jones. If you remember, he used to be the publisher of the Virginian Pilot. And so Keisha Lance Bottoms is also mentioned in there. There are many women and men, but I just found it very interesting that once again, Virginia is on the national map as well as on the local map. So here's the thing that happened though during this whole thing, and I really want to hear you guys' perspective on this. So actress Eva Longoria, who was a very active, it still is a very active Latina activist, and helped to bring out the vote and so forth. And she was on MSNBC, and she made a statement that blew Twitter to smithereens. I mean, they just went crazy. So let's listen to what she said first, and then we'll come back and talk about her response.
The women of color showed up in big ways. Of course, you saw in Georgia what Black women have done, but the Latina women were the real heroines here, beating men in turnout in every state and voting for Biden-Harris at an average rate close to 3-1.
Now, she said Latina women were the real heroines. Then Twitter went crazy. Two camps. One was, you know what? Here we go being disrespected again from Black women's perspective. The second one was, oh, she just made a mistake. Let's listen to her correction or apology for what she said.
In my effort to celebrate Latina turnout, I diminished the importance of the Black women's vote in this election. And what I said was wrong. And it is a fact that African-American women showed up in record numbers and brought us to victory. They saved this country. And I recognize the harm that my words caused. If we've learned anything from this administration is that words matter. And so I take full responsibility for that mistake because I want everybody to know that we stand on the shoulders of Black women who always show up. Black women have carried us for decades when it comes to civic engagement. And I get that there's a collective exhaustion and hurt at feeling erased yet again. And I contributed to that pain in a moment where Black women should have been lifted up, not erased. And I failed to do that. But this is an uncomfortable moment. This is what an uncomfortable moment looks like. And I can only show up and be better and do better. And that's what I'm doing.
So where do you fall? Sincerity? Or did she diss us? Should we care? Dawn, let me go start with you.
Why are you going to start with me? Anyway.
Because I'm sure your village was talking about it too.
Yeah, we did. But I think that her apology was sincere. And I do think that she, in her excitement, I don't think she meant to diminish us, even though the words came out that way. I think she was just so excited that the Latino vote was much higher than people anticipated that it would be, because there was a lot of discussion about how they were going to fall, and where the Cubans were going to be, and all in the Latino community. There was a mix, and just like it is in the Black community. And I just think that she was so excited that 3-1, they did turn out for Biden, and she wanted to get that across, and she worked so hard to help make it happen. I do think it was an error on her part. I'm glad that she apologized, and that's where I'm going to leave that.
Okay. Alvean?
So I think that we had a situation that was kind of the difference between MVP, as in most valuable players, and maybe we call them MVV, most valuable voters, right about now, versus the MIV, most improved voters, right? So I think she was excited about the MIV inside of the Latina community. And she was trying to say that, wow, I'm so impressed that we saw such a huge jump inside of this space. And in so doing, there was a verbal misstep, to say the least, in some way almost seeming like she doesn't recognize who the MVPs really are, or the MVVs really were inside of this campaign, as they continue to be. We often save America from itself over and over and over again. The Doug Jones and Roy Moore. I mean, we save America from pedophiles. We save America from, going off the cliff. We save America all kinds of times. And when people say stand on our shoulders, yes, on our shoulders, in our lap, we breastfeed America. We do it all. Okay. And so there is a sense that there's an expectation that at this point, there's a true acknowledgement of that. We're not asking you to give us credit for something we haven't done. We're just saying acknowledge what we have been doing historically for years, no matter what. So I accept her apology, because I think, like I said, I really think she was trying to do the most improved voter, and she has a right to be excited about that, because she worked hard for that. But you do have to be careful what you say, because folks are always listening, and these walls have ears. And Twitter will drag you if you do not have your stuff together. Black Twitter will rip you a new one, so watch yourself.
And yes, it did. Oh, my goodness. Carol, go ahead, your response.
Well, initially, when I heard her first comments, I think I was offended and hurt, because I looked at the history of Black women, and particularly because I'm a small town person, I remember the fight and the things that we suffer. But then when I heard her apology, I said she spoke out of the same kind of excitement that I experienced. And sometimes when you're very, very excited, you forget to be, you forget all of the analysis that shows in and all of the things that affect the position. You're just so caught up in the moment. But I do think that her apology was sincere. It was comprehensive and well-spoken.
Okay.
So I accept it.
Alison, which side do you fall on? Are you she dissed us again, or we give her a break?
Oh, neither. I don't care. I mean,
you don't care. Okay.
The first comment, we were like, what, girl? And then when she cleaned it up, we were like, okay, I got it. I don't think it wasn't a lot of energy, because I don't look at Eva as a hero to us, so it wasn't disappointing. the disrespect is so real. You know what I'm saying? It would have just been here goes another one kind of thing. But once I heard her explanation, I get it. You know, I talk all the time, and when you're thinking, especially when you're presenting something to somebody else, sometimes you're thinking about what to say next, didn't finish one sentence, didn't get it all out, kind of just what Dr. Pretlow said. She didn't fully complete the whole thought in her head, and she wanted to get to the point that she saw her homegirls show up and show out. And that's how I am, too. I will give credit. If it's 6 of us, I don't care about anybody else. If I'm trying to shout out and hype up, you know, I'm everybody hype girl. So if it's 6 of my girls, like, I see y'all with that C. Okay, see, the real scholars got a C+, you know, and people be like, first of all, we've been 4.0 the whole time. I don't care about y'all, you know, so I can see that. But yes, originally hearing it, there was that, y'all do disrespect people out here coming for us Black women. But at this point, the way that Black women have really risen up over the last, 2 years or so, more than that, but in a way in which people are super scared, it's one of those now people can be disrespectful. And I'm just like, oh, we don't even got to rise up, Black women. Like, you know, people are removing people for coming in correctly. Does that make sense?
Okay. Let's talk to Renee in Hampton. Hi, Renee. You're on the air.
Hi, I'm so glad to hear this important conversation this morning or afternoon. Actually, I wanted to ask you about the impact you think among African American women, the QAnon debacle. Well, I call it a debacle, but I had African American sisters tell me, well, we know Trump is not that bad, but he is much better than the alternative, the flesh-eating, baby-killing, you know, people that are actually trying to permeate the fabric of the entire world. I had sisters say that to me. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about the extreme evangelical movement and how that religion or that whole fear of pedophilia or pedophiliac behavior may have impacted African American women's votes.
Okay, thanks so much for the call, Renee. Who wants to take that one on? Alvean, I see you smiling, so I'm going to pick you.
Well, I will admit, so this conversation very often about being pro-life versus pro-choice and, you know, what the motivation is behind it from a spiritual standpoint, seeing it as a demonic force. Even if you hear really hardcore evangelicals have a conversation about it, it can be profoundly polarizing, to say the least, while I absolutely 100% respect the passion. So here's what I will say. I am pro-life for myself, but the Bible says that I set before you life and death. Choose life. Now, that is to say that God never had a problem with you having the option. What God wants is for us to choose the best of the options over and over again. And in a society that doesn't create pathway for people in the most difficult situations inside of their lives to see how they can choose life and still be upwardly mobile, how they can choose life and still take care of the kids they may already have, how they can choose life and still, if we're not being whole lifers, then we are just pro-fetus. And I struggle with the notion that you can be pro-war, you can be pro-guns, you can be pro-death penalty, but you're also pro-life simultaneously. Because to me, that there's some contradiction inside of that statement. If you're truly pro-life, it's all life under all circumstances. Or is it just innocent life? And where does innocence stop? Because if you don't believe in social justice, then when you have poor, innocent brown and Black individuals going to jail because they can't afford bail or a proper attorney, and so then their whole lives are destroyed as a result of that, is that not still part of our responsibility as pro-lifers? So I often define myself as a whole lifer because I believe that is what God calls me to care about it from the cradle to the grave. And every inconvenient truth in between requires me to acknowledge that this is what's necessary. Now, I make the distinction and exception for rape and incest. I absolutely do. I also recognize that my values for me are not meant to be projected on someone else. But if I really believe in my values, then I want to create the atmosphere so that someone else feels comfortable enough, safe enough, supported enough to even consider the values that may be my own. But I judge no one for the fact that they need to make the best decision for themselves. So this argument that is pitting us against one another, if God desired us to only do what he said, then he wouldn't have given us free will. He gave us free will so that when we choose him, that is the ultimate statement. So to have the option of choice should not be a problem. The issue is us individually having to decide what that choice is going to be for us.
Daun, what do we need to do to bring in those within our community who voted for Trump and who don't believe that the Biden-Harris administration is going to be good for them? How do we mend that bridge?
It's going to take a lot of conversation. And it's going to take a different way of communicating truth because, social media is not the way to get information, factual information. But if you're going to use social media, you have to know when to check because QAnon is just another cultural phenomenon that individuals have used to infiltrate your mind. And once your mind is infiltrated with information that is not accurate, and you don't have anyone around you and in your circle to help you to balance that conversation and be able to show you facts. People can talk about something, but to be able to show you facts. But even with what I just said, if you show some individuals who believe an alternative reality, so to speak, they will say that what you're showing them is not true. And so a lot of it is going to have to be by lived experience and helping them to see, helping people to grow and understand how when the tax is going to be put on those who make $400,000 or more, that is not taxing you. So there's just so much into the falsehood that has been put in people's minds. Your brain is your strongest tool in your body. And when we diminish it and allow it to be diminished, it takes you to these other places where you do things and think things and believe things that are not true. And it's going to take a lot to overcome that. But I think that's a part of the conversation that we were having where we have to make sure that people can see that what happens in this new administration will help to improve their lives. Because if they believe it strongly, until they see something different, they're going to continue to believe it.
Okay, let's talk to Mary Alison Franklin. Hi, Mary Alice, you're on the air.
Wonderful panel. I just wanted to comment on Eva Longoria's apology. I agree with, I think what all of the panelists said, that her original statement was probably due to her excitement, but to the apology, after years and years and years of hearing non-apology apologies, and I've heard one time that you should never ruin a good apology with a but. And she corrected herself when she did almost say but I thought her apology was very heartfelt.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mary Alice, for the call. We appreciate it. Alison, I saw you reacting to Mary Alice.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with Mary Alice that she had a great apology. I mean, it was one of those, if you wanted to hear her heart, you did. If you wanted to be mad, you're going to be mad. But what she said was so solid that it was like, okay, girl, you're right. Don't say it again. Thanks.
But you just made a statement. If you want to hear your heart, and I want to hear from each of you as we move into this. We're in this period now where the President of the United States says he won. and he's not conceding. And he has people surrounding him who are continuing to perpetuate that misconception, let's call it. What do we need to do individually as well as collectively to try to keep moving forward, but also bring others along with us? Because as you said, Daun, earlier, this country literally is split 50-50. I mean, in terms of what they're believing. Let me start with you, Carol. Let's start with you.
Well, I have a habit with most situations, no matter how hurt I am, is to say, okay, what's the lesson for this? Move on. As far as Trump is concerned, I'm through. I am focused on what is happening now, what legislation can be passed, what we individually and collectively in the community can do, and in teaching my students how to avoid replicating the mistakes of the Trump administration. So I'm through with Trump. I don't want to talk about him. And unfortunately, I have a whole library full of books about him that I should burn. But I'm moving on.
Okay, Alison? How do we move
I mean,
people?
I think that we can learn.
Mm-hmm.
You said,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, we learned from his baby mama. He packed up that budget truck so fast and moved out. Melania said she done. So that's how we can do it. Some baby mama pulled that truck out there and was like, oh, I'm going back to be me a rich heifer at home by myself. I'm done. Melania was done. I don't think Melania voted for him. Melania circled in that Biden so fast.
Alvean.
Well, I would say that, we have to recapture the thing that we lost over these last 4 years. And that is the ability to have civil discourse, the ability to disagree without being disagreeable, the ability to see things differently without having to demonize one another, and the ability to have different perspectives without polarization. We've stopped doing human things well anymore. It's not that the world didn't have some of the feelings that they had. We did. What this administration did is it just unearthed those things. The underbelly of America, like when my dogs roll over and you finally see, how much they've been laying in the grass, they got a rash on their belly. Well, the underbelly of America was exposed as a result of this. Our quick response to things going to anger and violence, our quick response to things to go to run to our corners, to become tribal in our orientation. You've got families that are fractured as a result of these last 4 years. Families, not just folks who are having, political debates. There are folks who will not be at the table this Thanksgiving because we cannot find our way to seeing things differently without having to see you as the enemy. And when we started doing this, the media is the enemy, Democrats are enemies, Republicans are enemies, mainstream versus underground, this enemy thing that we created, we stopped being Americans. And so my hope is that we will, one by one, be working to have these conversations again, to remember that we are in this thing together. And to demonize one another is to be on the same boat while shooting holes at the bottom of the boat that we're both on. And we've got to cut that out because America suffers. When you make them question democracy, our place in the world suffers. So this is bigger than a candidate. This is about the republic. This is about who we are as a nation. And this is about the promise that America once represented in the world. We've got to reclaim that in how we handle each other.
Daun?
That was so powerful,
Yes.
Alvean. You're so good with your words. Thank you so very much.
Yes.
I remember the day when I told my husband, I am prepared to die for my country. And I had never in my 65 years had to have that thought. I've always known that things were challenging and different, and the racism and all of that, and all the isms, not just the racism, because as I've continued to read and grow, Caste is a great book to read for those who have not read it. And so I
by Isabella Wilkerson. I was just telling the author. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I am going to do my best to listen more, and to try not to be judgmental in my listening, but to really be open to hearing things that I may not necessarily agree with. Because, as long as I've been elected, I have made mistakes on decisions and things that I have voted for. And I realize that now after the fact. I thought I had all the information I needed to make the decision that I made. I could justify the decision that I made. But over time, I've learned that, no, that wasn't necessarily the best thing to do, that I should have done. And so you try to think about everything and how it will impact everybody else's lives. And I'm hoping that that's what we will see and have going forward, truly in this conversation going forward. And I know we're getting close to the end, but I'm just going to try to listen more. And I got to say one more thing because you might not come back to me.
Okay.
I've got to thank the Divine Nine because we got to thank our Greek organizations. We got an AKA in the house. I have to say to our HBCU, our historically black colleges and universities, got to give them a shout out because we were up in the house as well. And to our young people, our 25, 18-year-olds, they came out and voted too. So I want to congratulate them, and I want them, if they're listening, to hear that and others to share it because we need them to vote again. And in Virginia, you vote every year. So we got another election in November to pick a governor. You have to stay informed and in tune and continue to vote every time.
Absolutely. Daun,
thank you.
And Daun, before you go, let me ask you this too. Give us a cultural lesson very quickly on the significance of the pearls and the chucks for those who don't understand Greek culture. Can you shed some light on that for us real quick? You got 1 minute left.
Okay, when I go to the inauguration, I'm going to have my pearls on. But in all of your sororities, pearls matter to us. And we wear pearls, and they're significant for when you join a sorority. They're significant when you go into what we call Omega Omega, when you pass on. And in everything that we do in ceremonial-wise, we wear pearls. And so you will see a whole bunch of pearls at inauguration. The Chuck Taylors they were special to Kamala in her upbringing. And so we will have on our Chuck Taylors, too, at inauguration. That isn't anything really in the Greek world, but that was special to Kamala, and so it has been adopted into the Divine Nine Greek world for the females, for sure.
So, see, on another view, you get cultural lessons on top of everything else. I just love it. Thank you, ladies, so much, as always. And we will continue to work and to move forward, and we'll have lots to talk about again next month. And thank you for hanging out with us today. If you'd like to hear this show again or share it with a friend, please visit our website, anotherviewradio.org. And while you're there, please sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. You can always find us on Facebook and also on Twitter. Next week on Another View, Dwayne Bryant, author of The Stop, practical advice on interacting with police during a traffic stop. He has advice for everyone, including the police. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. The pandemic is not over. Wash your hands, stay socially distant, wear your mask, and join us again next Thursday at noon for Another View.